Our first shade is a Meco Shade manual bottom-up shade with 2 tubes. The tube at the top has a custom Meco 5 bracket designed to fit in the P&A pocket, which is not shown here. The tube at the bottom has a Meco Shade extended bracket with extended fascia covering it. The window opening here, I know it's hard to see, but the window opening here is narrower at the top than it is at the bottom. So the shade tapers at the top, and this opening is also tilted inward at about a 5-degree angle. The shade has drive cables attached to the 1-inch fabric hem tube at the top. We're going to operate it here. The shade also has a spring in the bottom tube to help lift the shade. I'm going to try to see if I can, zoom in here on this. And I don't think I can. Okay, well, I think you can see the drive cables here. The drive cables are attached to the 1-inch hem tube, and they're about 25% in from each end, and they're attached to the bottom, and then they roll up onto the tube, which is shown at the top. Now, at the top, the shade tube and brackets will be recessed into the P&A pocket. You'll notice that, if you raise it up again, I'm going to try to show you that the gap on the one side that tapers is wider at the bottom, but as the shade is raised, it's going to even out. So, when it gets all the way to the top, it's going to have the same gap on each side. It gets closer and closer as it goes up, because it is a tapered shade. So that is the bottom-up shade. The next shade, the second shade here, let me back up from it, is a Meco Shade standard rectangular manual shade, but this one has guide wires. The window opening here is rectangular, but it tilts in at about a 5-degree angle. The guide wires allow the shade to operate and stay in line with the window tilt. I'm going to try to show you the guide wires. They're here at the outside edge. The hem bar at the bottom is a 1-inch fabric wrapped hem tube with the guide wires at the outside edges. These shades will be mounted in a P&A pocket with the custom Meco 5 bracket. At the top, you'll see we tried to approximate the shape and size of the P&A pocket with the closure piece. And I don't know if you can see this too well, but at the top on the right-hand side where the chain is, the pocket, the piece of closure had to be notched, because with these shades with guide wires at the outside edge, the guide wires are placed in such a way that the chain has to be mounted to the front of the shade, in order to not get in the way of the guide wires. So there is a notch there at the top, which you can't see very well here. And then also you'll notice that the hem tube is wider than the shade fabric in order to mount the guide wires at the outside edges. The guide wires are mounted at the top to the brackets at the outside edge. This type of shade can only be raised as far as the bottom of the bracket because the hem is as wide as the brackets. The hem bar, the 1-inch hem bar, will not recess fully into the P&A pocket. We're going to raise it up here for you. And, as you see, when it gets all the way up to the top, the hem bar is going to stop short of recessing into the pocket because, it really can't go past the shade bracket. So it goes up, pretty far, but stops at the bottom there. So that is the rectangular shade with the guide wires. The third shade, I guess I should note this. At the bottom, at the sill, if you can see this, the guide wires need to be anchored at the bottom of the sill. So there is going to be a penetration at every location where guide wires are anchored. that would be on, you know, the windows, all the windows from 33 up that have guide wires. They're going to have a location to anchor them. The third shade is a Meco shade, skewed shade. And this shade will be mounted at the top into a recessed pocket, which we're not really showing here, but if you look at the top, one of the shades is mounted, one end of the shade is mounted higher than the other end. The opening the shade is going into is skewed, where the sides are parallel. Let me back up here so you can see it. The sides are parallel, but they're tilted to one side, and the window also tilts inward at about a 5-degree angle. The hem here is a universal exposed hem bar. So if you can see the hem bar there. And in this case, the guide wires are mounted a few inches in. You can't really see the guide wires here because the shade is down and they're behind the shade. Again, they need to be anchored at the bottom into the sill. So there's going to be a penetration there. We're going to raise this shade up then. The hem bar is at an angle, so it's parallel to the window sill at the bottom. But at the top, you'll see that it's tilted. One side's going to drop, hangs down lower than the other side, so that it's parallel to the sill. So that is the manual skewed shade.